It's the final countdown!
All right. Yours truly, Ryan Thomas, live on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the final countdown. Or is it between Chuck the Iceman Liddell and Tito Ortiz? The third time, will it be the charm for the Huntington Beach bad boy Tito Ortiz versus Chuck Liddell? Two previous fights, the Iceman Chuck Liddell got the better of Tito via TKO in both instances. And in looking at this fight and giving my opinion on it, and you know, I've done that in previous podcasts, but just to give everybody a little bit of a refresher, my opinion is this: despite the fact that Tito Ortiz is 44 years old, despite the fact that Chuck Liddell is 49 years old, 48 years old, whatever, 48, 49, pushing 49 maybe, fighters fight. That was a statement that was once part of the script in terms of Rocky Balboa. And obviously Rocky is a movie franchise, but I will throw out the notion that George Foreman came back after a long retirement. Sugar Ray Leonard retired and unretired and retired again multiple times throughout his career, maybe 3 times over. Floyd Money Mayweather retired and came back. Granted, not at the ripe age of 44 or 48, but he did come back at 40 to fight a fighter that had never done it before in terms of the boxing, the squared circle, in Conor McGregor. So this isn't the first time or the last time we'll see two fighters that are past their prime duking it out. It's not the first time or the last, but this is definitely a notable occurrence because both Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz were two fighters that were believed to have made enough money, definitely had enough glory, definitely accomplished any which goal that they set out. Maybe Tito would have liked to hold the belt a little bit longer. Obviously, maybe Tito would have liked to have got one of those two fights so that way this fight was a rubber match. And if this fight was a rubber match, I can honestly tell you, nobody would be saying, oh, these guys are too old to be fighting each other. Only reason why they're saying that they're too old to be fighting each other is not because of their age. It's because they've already seen the outcome of this fight 2 times, and it both ended virtually the same way. But this rivalry sells itself. This sport, known as mixed martial arts today, was built on the rivalry of Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz, among many other things. But really, the rivalry between Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz were the first fights that really generated a lot of hype in mixed martial arts. So to say that these guys are too old to be fighting, I just think that that's a little unfair. I think that's a little classless by fans who are fans. You know, we'll leave it up to the fighters. If they want to fight, they can fight. If they don't, they don't. I'm gonna pay to see it. I'm gonna whether it's go out to the bar and watch it and pay for a meal while I'm watching it, or if I watch it at my house and have some buddies over. Regardless, I'm in. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of both fighters. I'm a fan of the history of the sport because I remember the history of the sport. And to say that, well, these two guys have no business being in an octagon is a little bit ridiculous. These guys have all reasons to be in the octagon at their age. If there's any two guys in the sport's history that deserve to have one last, crack at it, it would be Chuck and Tito. So, they are getting that opportunity, and yes, they are getting an opportunity to get paid, in the words of Oscar de la Hoya, more than they've ever been paid. I don't know how true that is. I don't know how successful this event is going to be, given the stigma that's surrounding it, given the fact that, yes, Chuck Liddell did lose his last 3-4 fights via devastating knockout. He was on the receiving end of some brutal knockouts. And then the other side of the coin, Tito Ortiz was actually able to walk out of the sport with his head held high with a submission victory over a tough, durable Chael Sonnen under the Bellator banner. So I understand the criticisms. I get it. I understand the wondering as to why these guys are fighting, but let's just cut that. Let's just cut that out, and let's just say, regardless, they want to fight each other. Chuck wants to... Let's just state why they might want to fight each other. Chuck wants to end his career on a good note, rewrite some history a little bit, put an exclamation point on the rivalry with a clean sweep of Tito Ortiz, 3-0, and Tito Ortiz sees this as a redemption opportunity to get a fight, get paid well, and also get a loss to Chuck Liddell back with a victory over Chuck Liddell. And before I dive into who I think can win the fight, I just needed to say that. I needed to give these guys the benefit of the doubt. They deserve it. We wouldn't even be talking about this sport if it wasn't for these two guys. I feel like if there's any two guys that we can just say, you know what, yeah, they're old, but so what? Who gives a shit? It's Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz. And just say, you know what, who gives a shit? Who gives a rat's? Whatever you want to say. Pardon my French, but these two guys deserve that opportunity. And talk of this fight has been going on for 9 years. So this is not anything new. It was just something that really took a long time to get the green light. Neither the UFC, Bellator, or ONE FC, as they're the third real player along with the Professional Fighters League, they didn't want anything to do with it. And a new promoter by the name of Oscar De La Hoya in MMA, who every fight fan should know is the world champion boxer, he wanted to dip his toes in the MMA waters. He wanted to see what MMA had to offer to him. And he thought that this fight would be one that would make him and the other fighters some money. We'll see how wrong or right he was in that assessment come, probably November 30th, December 1st, as we see the pay-per-view numbers trickle in. Usually it takes about a week for those things to happen. But he's off to a good start in terms of generating curiosity, positive reasons or negative reasons. Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz put butts in the seats at any age, in any time, in any era. Maybe not as much as they did 15 years ago. I can't say that will be the case. I can't say that this fight will generate the 1 to 2 million pay-per-view buys that the other two fights did. But I can say that it's an interesting card to play in terms of the hand that Golden Boy MMA has dealt in getting their feet off the ground. So let's just get right to it. Who do I think is going to win? As obvious as it is to say, there's been moments where I have been a Tito fan. I respect what he's done for the sport. There's been moments that I love Chuck Liddell. I respect what he's done for the sport. But I do have to say, being that Chuck Liddell hasn't fought in nearly 10 years, this is a, break unlike any other. But Chuck Liddell looks to be in fantastic shape. Chuck Liddell looks to have no pot belly, which he was very known to have once upon a time. And I do think he's taking this fight seriously. I don't think this fight is just some sort of quote-unquote publicity stunt. I think Chuck Liddell wouldn't do anything unless he believed that he could win, because Chuck Liddell is a competitor. With all that being said, though, I do think there is such a thing as ring rust, and I think that will be the downfall of Chuck Liddell in this fight. Not necessarily the fact that he is older, because Tito Ortiz is older. Tito Ortiz has had several devastating injuries throughout his career. That's always been the biggest question mark about Tito, is his health. So to say that a 48-year-old man shouldn't fight a 44-year-old man when one has suffered devastating knockout losses, the other has suffered devastating injuries, we're about even in terms of the cards that these fighters have been dealt along their illustrious careers. And I will say that, but I'll also say that the layoff of Chuck Liddell, this 10-year retirement almost, is never a good idea to come back after that long off. And for those reasons, I think Tito has aged a little better, despite the fact he's had some devastating injuries, especially to his neck, to his knees, spine, really devastating injuries for a fighter. It's a wonder why Tito is fighting as well right now, given that he ended his career on a really good note, came out of that fight relatively healthy versus Chael Sonnen and was able to ride off into the sunset under Bellator. But I do think Tito will win this fight. I do worry about Chuck's health. I do worry about the long layoff. I do worry about how this fight will be perceived long term. I perceive it one way, but I understand rightfully so why others perceive it the other way. I perceive it as these guys have really done so much for this sport. We wouldn't even be talking about this, I don't think, if it wasn't for Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, Tito Ortiz. Those three gentlemen back in the day at 205 pounds were really the first stars that the Zuffa era produced, along with Matt Hughes, Rich Franklin. But these guys are past their prime. There's no doubt about it. But, hey, I'm a fight fan. I will be tuning in. I really appreciate all that these two fighters have done for the sport, and I support it 110%. At the end of the day, it's not my decision. It's theirs. They want to go out there. They want to put their bodies on the line more than they already have. That's their choice. I'm the consumer. I will consume the lead up to the fight. I will consume the fight itself, and I will consume the aftermath of the fight itself. I'm entertained by it. I find it entertaining. It was really cool seeing Chuck Liddell back out there. I felt like I really got to see the majority of Chuck Liddell's career, but I forgot a lot of it due to the fact that it's been quite a long time since we've seen Chuck in there. And to have an app or a program such as UFC Fight Pass, whatever you want to call it, where I could go back and watch some of Chuck's old fights, go back and watch some of Tito's old fights. These were two of the best pound-for-pound fighters on the planet, and they deserve to have a curtain call. But I do see Tito winning that fight on November 24th. I'm Ryan Thomas. It was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. The final countdown, Chuck Liddell versus Tito Ortiz 3, live at the Forum on pay-per-view. The third and maybe final time these guys will get in the octagon. Take care, everybody.